Susan Slusser of the San Francisco Chronicle reporting that multiple sources say the Giants are still in on Blake Snell and Matt Chapman, with one source saying the odds of the Giants getting one of those guys are at 50-50. So let's just hope we're living in the universe where it's the 50% chance that they end up with at least one of those guys.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily San Francisco Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Giants, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. My name is Ben Kaspick, and on the show we provide daily episodes Monday through Friday, talking about the San Francisco Giants in a way that's data-driven and rational, but also simple, passionate, and accessible to all. I'm a former contributor for the baseball statistics and analysis websites Beyond the Box Score and Rotographs. I've been podcasting about the Giants since 2015, been hosting this show for nearly 5 years now, and I'm a lifelong fan. Thank you for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube. Check us out there if you have not already, and please hit that subscribe button wherever it is that you're following the show. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. New customers join today, and you'll get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. And coming up on today's show, we are going to discuss this Susan Slusser report that multiple sources have told her that the Giants are still in, yes, on Blake Snell and Matt Chapman. Jordan Montgomery not mentioned there. Those are the two guys who stand out to me as the best fits. I really think Snell, although Chapman also makes a lot of sense. But I'm going to be talking about it with Javier Reyes from Locked On Padres, getting his opinion on Snell, how the Padres are in a different place than the Giants. Does it make sense for the Giants to go after a guy like Snell, even though Javier is going to point out, we know there are red flags with Blake Snell, and he's going to speak to those from the perspective of someone who watched him make every single start that he made in the last few seasons. So without further delay, here is that conversation expounding upon this report that the Giants, have a 50-50 shot, according to one source, at getting one of these guys.
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to not just another edition of the Locked On Padres podcast. It's not just Padres today. No. It is a crossover extravaganza. I am being joined by the host of Locked On Giants, Mr. Ben Kaspick. We are crossing over because, we're in the same division, and it's what we do, especially when it's the off season, and we got to find things to talk about. And for once, my friend, not for once, but as of late, we have actual news that kind of relates to both of our teams that we're going to be getting into, particularly about Sir Blake Snell. We're going to be talking about him today. Why hasn't he signed yet? What's going on? And some little whispers that the San Francisco Giants are one of the teams that may be in on him, which would be potentially a tough pill to swallow, losing both Bob Melvin and Blake Snell to your division rival. So we're going to talk about that, as well as the free agent class and whether or not that impacts things, not just this year's free agent class, but next year's, and whether or not investing in Snell right now makes the most sense. So it's going to be a fun episode. Before we get into though, I just want to remind everybody today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. New customers join today, and you'll get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. And Ben, first of all, before we get started, how are you holding up? How are you doing during these spring training times, and at a time period when your team seems to be getting slandered left and right? Whether it be San Francisco, whether it be they can't get free agents, whether it be on a roundtable discussion that you and I may or may not have recorded already that is going to be posted later. How you holding up, man?
Yeah, in the future, you as my audience is going to be ticked off at Millard Thomas of Locked On D-backs, just like I am right now. You get to be you, the listener, get to be oblivious to this, but you'll hear it eventually. I'm used to it, though, to be honest. The Giants, the city of San Francisco, slandered left and right, including by their own fans, not so much about the city, people who live in the Bay Area know it's actually a great place to be, including the city itself for the most part. But, the team, people want more out of this team. And I understand it. Like the last 2 years have not been good enough. You had that 107 win season, but beyond that, like the last time they made the playoffs was 2016 and they lost in the division series and they lost in the division series in 2021. So, the championship era is over. Crawford just signed with the Cardinals, which is insane. And,
Yeah.
so it's a new era and it's time to start winning. And so that's why when we talk Snell and we talk about the free agents who are still out there, they fit this Giants team. And so I'm just kind of waiting back, like saying, hey, hold on a second. They still might go out and get one of these guys, one or more preferably. But, and then, like you said, whispers. So can't wait to get into that. Yeah.
We're going to get into that. And look, like from afar, I think the Giants are low key one of the more chaotic teams in the league right now. And I say that because obviously the whole even year thing from when they were winning, and when they were winning, they weren't a Dodgers juggernaut and they were still a very good team, but they didn't have, 7 MVPs in their lineup. They just had really good players and they played well together, and Hunter Pence making that weird face as he swings and all that. So you had that weirdness, you had the Lidsicum stuff and all that. And then nowadays, for me from afar, in a strange way, how they've been weird is like top Favre system for what I started hosting this podcast, and then it hasn't really fully come to fruition. And then they're a weird team that still stumbles into being decent, and then they have the random 106 win season, and then they have 107, and then they have the season when they have like the worst defense ever. I believe that's 2022.
Yep.
And then they have this where it's like now they're overpaying, and I say that in quotes, for Jung Ho Lee, and then they're getting Jorge Soler. Like it's this weird team that like a lot of things have gone wrong, but there's such an infrastructure and trust there that like, when you do over-unders and stuff like that, speaking of FanDuel, like I don't want to say anything about the Giants because I'm scared of them. You know this. I've said this for years. They terrify me because there's something going on, man. Something in that Bay Area water. I don't know, man. Like that just they'll at least be competitive and they will find guys to be good role players. They've had trouble landing a star though. And based on some recent reports, if you'd like to read and talk about what has been happening in the Giants bubble regarding one Blake Snell, maybe this is the next star for them to get, one that they haven't had in a long time.
Because that's exactly the thing, is that they have competent players all over the place. They don't have like these black holes in the lineup or in their pitching staff generally, although this year, looking at how it looks, this is one of the things Millard referenced, and I actually, as I was stewing on it after the recording, realized he's right. He said they were one Logan Webb injury away from having a pretty sketchy looking rotation, and he's total troll. He said, I will save what he said. But anyway, they have fine players, like tons of them. Like there's no bad players getting playing time on this team for the most part, but they just have not had that star talent outside of, I would argue, I guess, Logan Webb, who's established himself as a frontline starter. Yeah. But Blake Snell is also a frontline starter. Yeah. Blake Snell won the National League Cy Young Award, as Padres fans and you are well aware. Logan Webb finished second. And so you have a chance, if you were to sign this guy, to literally have number 1 and number 2 in last year's National League Cy Young Award voting. And the report is courtesy of Susan Slusser, who is a very well-respected writer, and she is the beat writer for the Giants for the San Francisco Chronicle. And this evening, Tuesday evening, she wrote, among other things, quote, according to multiple sources, San Francisco remains in on both free agents. She's speaking of Blake Snell and Matt Chapman. And then she says, with one source gauging the team's potential for signing one or the other at 50-50, end quote. And so that's not the most encouraging thing I've ever heard in my life. Like 50-50, you get one of the two, when they really, to me, should be like all in on getting one or both of these guys. I mean, to me, pitching is a bigger need. They've got a lot of young pitching, but it's unproven like pitching. And like for the last several years, they've had a lot of like mid-tier kind of safe pitching with like Alex Wood and Anthony DeSclafani and Ross Stripling and Sean Manaea, guys like that. And it's kind of backfired where they weren't so safe and they kind of didn't pitch well, and they kind of got rid of all of them. They let Wood leave in free agency. They traded DeSclafani. They traded Ross Stripling. So it kind of paved the way for what they consider to be a really good pipeline of young pitching. Kyle Harrison, like the headliner there, really like considered the best left-handed pitching prospect in baseball right now. Nasty stuff. But at the end of the day, and then they signed Jordan Hicks, who, as we all know, can throw 105-mile-an-hour bowling ball sinkers, who's going to start. But that's like part of the thing is like, that's an unproven project. He's made like 8 career starts. And then you're talking about a bunch of like rookies essentially after that outside of Webb. And so, but then it gets even more complicated because they traded for Robbie Ray, which I thought was a really kind of nifty move because they gave up 2 guys who totally stunk for them last year in Haniger and DeSclafani, and they get the 2021 Cy Young Award winner in return. And they also have Alex Cobb both of those guys are going to start the season on the injured list and miss significant time. And so it's like, on the one hand, it's such an inexperienced rotation. On the other hand, you've got 2 very experienced guys like waiting in the wings, but are going to miss a couple months. And so a couple at least for Ray, we might be looking at like August for a return. And so all of that to say, the Giants have done a lot this offseason. They've added a lot of players, but I think they still literally like maybe both Snell and Chapman. But just if you went out and got Snell, to me, that just like that vaults them into that tier where it's like they're legit contenders to be in the postseason, just on paper, which it's been a little while since it's been that clear. Even in 2021, it wasn't clear. It just happened. But I think Snell would put them in that echelon.
Yeah, not to mention like you said, like a lot of unproven guys outside Webb, and Webb is such a freak. I mean, I know that like some people might not always see it because the strikeout rate isn't as high as say Blake Snell's, but the important thing to note is I'm pretty sure every single hit off of him is on the ground. So that's how to explain to people why Logan Webb is so good. But before we talk about Snell, maybe why I'm going to offer the counter potentially to Blake Snell as a Padres guy and talk about next year's free agent class as part of that counter. Before we get into that, guys, you love them. We talked about over-unders. We've talked about odds. He just said 50-50. Well, there is a 100% chance that FanDuel is going to have you covered with all of your betting needs, ladies and gentlemen. Obviously, football is over. It's been over. I got to stop saying that when I do this ad. Obviously, it's over. You know that.
Don't remind us in San Francisco about
That's
this.
True. That's true. I didn't even think about that. Yeah. Football's a terrible sport. Everybody in San Francisco. I agree with you.
Never happened.
Anyway, never happened. Nothing. You're all good. But basketball is kicking off right now. I know the Warriors are heating up and whatnot, so that's pretty cool. If you want to bet on Steph Curry threes, if you want to bet on anyone, Chris Paul assists, that's probably going to be really fun when he comes back. So look forward to that. They've got you covered, guys. There's $150 on the line as well in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's for all you new customers out there. You just got to win $150 in extra bets. That's pretty cool. Quick bets, live same game parlays, exclusive props, much, much more. And as Ben said, 49ers football doesn't exist. We're in basketball season. You got March Madness coming up. You got hockey going on right now, and MLB futures are available. So go check those out, ladies and gentlemen. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and shoot your shot. Shoot your shot always in life, but also especially with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NBA. Whew. All right, folks. We're back here on the Locked On Padres podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Javier Reyes. The other one, Ben Kaspic. The other one, my co-host, Ben, also on this as well. And he just laid it out pretty well. Giants, it's Logan Webb, and the Robbie Ray could be like a really savvy move when we look at it later on. And Alex Cobb is a really effective veteran. And you've got Kyle Harrison, who's one of their top prospects, but that's a little bit of an unknown. If you were to get Blake Snell, yeah, that's a lot more of an established player. I think. So there's somebody I actually had a conversation today with someone who's like hates Scott Boras. And personally, I think that is a topic worthy of an entire episode, frankly. Scott Boras, I am someone who does not hate him at all. And I find that he's just doing his job. And it's like, well, yeah, I know that the remaining free agent guys are all Boras clients, but Jung-Ho Lee was a Boras client, and he signed fast and for what a lot of people think is above what was expected for a guy who's never played in Major League Baseball. So I'm going to save my Scott Boras thoughts for another time. But bottom line is, guys, just remember, like, it's kind of his job to be annoying and get people overpaid. Like, that's kind of like, yeah, that's kind of what he does. But with Blake Snell, I think that this is a really fascinating free agent. And for the record, the Giants have plenty of money to spend. They're 15th in their 26-man payroll, and their total 2024 payroll, they are 14th at 144 million. They still got some that they can shell out, right? And also because they're the Giants, and they certainly have money. I think with Snell, this is fascinating because this is a guy who had one of the more odd Cy Young seasons. And what I mean by that, to sum it up quickly, is just that he walked so many batters and it literally just didn't matter because of his strikeout stuff, because of the fact that he was getting batters to chase at an incredible rate at like garbage. I've never seen anything like it. It really was impressive, but teams are understandably worried. Padres had an elite defense. I don't know if you heard, Ben, a Gold Glove and a Platinum Glove winner on this defense. And I'm not talking about Manny Machado, right? Like, that's the crazy part about this team. So you consider that, you look at his FIP, you look at the walk rate. Is this a player that will age well? You know what I mean? Heading into age 30, a type of guy who relies on getting swings and misses, as opposed to someone like Logan Webb, who's not going to necessarily need to miss bats for a long time because he generates such a high ground ball rate. And then also with Blake Snell, has had some issues with efficiency, which might play into the fact that people are worried, how is this going to age? The 2 times that he's gone over 129 innings, he has won the Cy Young. So it's almost like, if you want to just nail it down to that, it's almost as simple as, will this guy be available? You might just have a Cy Young guy on your team. There is an argument to be made for that, and you could ignore everything I said before. But to me, the bigger issue here is there's red flags with every player. You know what I mean? Ohtani has a red flag. Now, I am not going to be the person who bets against Shohei Ohtani coming back to his pitching form. I am not a fool. I'm not going to bet on it, but I'm not going to, bet against a demigod, right? Like, I'm just not going to do that. But there's red flags. There's risk with every free agent. So ignoring that, to me, the bigger issue is next year's free agent class, Ben, is really stacked. And if you're a team that wants to shell out some money, or if you're a team that's like, are we just settling for what's best available right now? Or do we just think that he's best available in general? That's a fair question to ask. Among some of the free agents, and this is only starting pitchers for next year, and I've talked about this on my show, Garrett Cole has an opt-out. I doubt he does, but it's still worth pointing. Look, the thumbs up on my screen. I doubt he does, but that's worth bringing up. Then it gets really fun. Max Scherzer, Corbin Burns, Zach Wheeler, Max Fried, Shane Bieber, Walker Buehler, Nate Eovaldi, who has a vesting option. Robbie Ray has an opt-out. Alex Cobb, savvy veteran who we've talked about. Kyle Hendricks could be useful for some teams, maybe. Freddie Peralta has a club option. Merrill Kelly has a club option. Low-key been really effective for the D-backs. Michael Wacha has a player option. Wade Miley has a mutual option. Kyle Gibson, Luis Severino, if he finds anything with New York this year. Frankie Montas, if he finds anything with the Cardinals this year. Or, wait, hold on. Who signed Frankie Montas? I forgot. Was it the Cardinals?
Reds.
It was the Reds. That's right. If he reclaims that, like, really high upside strikeout stuff that he had before, that's an interesting free agent. And again, these are more question marks, but even still, like Anthony Sclafani, Jack Flaherty's velocity is up in spring training. Basically, when Spencer Turnbull's an interesting sleeper, in my opinion. So I just think that the free agent class and starting pitching is really, really strong for next year. What do you think?
I think it is, especially some of the top names. I'm not so much in like where the Giants are, as
Mhm.
I was kind of alluding to, is that they don't need more DeSclafanis and Woods and
Mhm.
Striplings. They need like a Corbin Burns or a Zach Wheeler, like
Mhm.
those types of names, or Garrett Cole, if he were to opt out for, I don't know what the remaining contract
I
is.
think
I
it's
know
still
he's
36 a year, so I'm pretty sure he's not
it's
opting out.
it's yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. But yeah, when you mention names like Corbin Burns, who grew up kind of in Northern California, so I don't know if he grew up a Giants fan or not, but you might have a legit shot at signing a Corbin Burns. I mean, that has been a factor. It's like they have a hard time signing guys, and guys who grew up somewhat locally are more likely to sign. And for Snell, by the way, like from Seattle, I think it helps being from the West Coast, for Seattle area, if you're trying to sign a guy like that. But so I agree. It is next year's free agent class, and starting pitching in particular is better than it was this year.
Mhm.
Even there was some really good names at the top. Yoshinobu Yamamoto, of
Right.
course,
Right.
future pitching Otani.
Yeah.
But the problem is, Javi,
Mm.
that the Giants can't afford to wait because
They
of
keep
what I
waiting, right?
said.
Yeah.
No, and they just haven't. Where has the aggression been? Where have they been? I mean, Jung Hoo Lee, that was an aggressive signing, like you
Mhm.
said. It kind of blew a lot of contract expectations out of the water. Granted, people were just kind of guessing what the contract would be, because when you don't have a major league track record, it's hard to, like, for example, the Zips projections, just by the way, line up almost perfectly with, like, the expected production lines up perfectly with the contract according to the Zips
Mm.
projection system. And so, I've heard it described as like a huge overpay, but I think they actually expect
Me too.
$113 million worth of production, and that's not even accounting for the posting fee. But
Yeah.
but they just can't afford to wait, and they've been too passive. And you look at moves they didn't make, like re-signing Kevin Gausman when he was popular here. He was like best friends with Logan Webb. He
Yeah.
liked it here. He said
Yeah.
he wanted to come back. And what did they
Yeah.
do? They didn't even make the guy an offer.
Yeah.
And he gets a what looks like an exceptionally reasonable
Yeah.
contract now, 5 years, 110 million from the Blue Jays, and now he's entering what, I guess, year three.
Mhm.
And he's just been great, and they could
Great
have
story
had him
too. Yeah.
back. They could
Mhm.
have had him back probably for less than that.
Yeah. I mean, 5 years, 110 is a
And now,
chunky deal, but you could definitely afford that.
well,
He's got 24 million average annual value, by the way, for this year.
I mean, look at Snell. He's going to cost.
Yeah.
I think he will cost more than 110.
Mhm.
And Gosman is a different story, like where he just kind of found himself with the
Mhm.
Giants, whereas Snell has kind of been doing it longer. But like you said, there's other red flags. That's the thing, is like players have red flags.
Mhm.
It's every move like this involves risk. And so I mentioned Kevin Gausman, but I could also mention Carlos Rodon, and that's the other side of the coin. Rodon was dominant with the Giants in 2022. They don't re-sign him either. There's another universe out there in which Rodon went and had a Cy Young season with the Yankees, and I'm sitting here saying Gausman and Rodon, they didn't re-sign these guys, and they were both great. But in reality, Gausman has continued to be great. Rodon, meanwhile, dealt with injuries and underperformance, and so
Mhm.
that just goes to show you the risk,
Yeah.
and that guys can be good, or guys can uh, kind of fall apart. And we don't know what's in store even for this upcoming year. It could flip flop. Maybe Rodon is great and Gosman falls apart. We don't know. But they just can't afford to wait any longer.
Mhm.
They've been too cautious,
Mhm.
and they are coming off an 81 win season followed by a 79 win season. And people here expect better than that. Like a
Yeah, man.
lot better than that.
Yeah. I
And
get it. I get it.
So like it may be that you're quote unquote settling for the best this year just because he's the best this year, but the dude won the Cy Young Award. I get it. It was a weird way to do it, but like he can, like you said,
Yeah.
walk all the guys you want, but none of them are scoring off of him
Yeah.
because he strikes everybody out. And when he does throw the ball in the strike zone, he's hard to hit. And so I'm just willing. I say just roll the dice. Just you got to at some point you got to put your cards, push your chips into the middle of the table. Otherwise, it's true in poker too. If you're too passive, you're a bad player. You gotta be aggressive.
At some point you gotta go in.
Yes,
absolutely. Like kicking the can down the road vibes. And it hasn't been unlike other major league teams for lack of trying. But that shows you, okay, there's a problem here. We need to start getting free agents. Otherwise, maybe guys don't want to come over here. And it's not because of the lazy San Francisco city narrative. It is fascinating. And I actually think that there's a bunch of different routes for them to take on this situation. And I'm really curious to see, maybe it's a Matt Chapman. That seems like he seems like a Giants player. I can't put my finger on why, but and then Jung Ho Lee, like you said, he's like kind of my, like, to use a basketball reference, kind of my Jalen Brunson for San Francisco. And what I mean by that is Jalen Brunson was like, for the New York Knicks, they haven't had a point guard in so long. And for the Giants, they haven't had a star caliber player that you're excited about in a long time. And at the time, Brunson, for all my hoops heads out there, everyone was like, huge overpay. I get why they did it. Same for the Giants. Like, yeah, we get why they did it, but it was an overpay. I think Jung Ho Lee is going to be awesome pretty quickly. I just think that his skill set transfers really well, and he's going to be a good defensive player. I think he's a 3-8 WAR player at minimum this year. I'm really high on Jung Ho Lee. I wanted the Padres to sign him, and reportedly they were very upset that they didn't sign him. They were very upset.
He's best friends with Ha-Sung Kim.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people were surprised.
So, we've talked trade possibilities earlier in the offseason with Ha-Sung Kim, but now I think it's more likely we're talking next offseason free agency possibilities with Kim coming to the Giants.
Exactly.
With Bob Melvin loves Ha-Sung Kim.
Yeah. Everyone does, yeah.
Everybody does. Even I do. And his best friend plays for the Giants, so they're going to have an advantage there. So
absolutely.
It'd be interesting to follow.
We're going to conclude this in just a second and talk a little bit about the Padres' perspective on this whole thing with Blake Snell as well in just a second, guys. But before we do that, look, if you want to get your tickets to see Jung Ho Lee and my prediction that he's at minimum a 4-win player, you can go check that out. GameTime. GameTime's got you covered, guys. Just download the app. And here's the thing. Buying tickets can be frustrating. Takes time for you to figure out the right seats and whatnot. Maybe they're going to be gone. Maybe it's going to be too much of a hassle, but not with GameTime, folks. You shouldn't have to worry when you buy your tickets for your next big event. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seats as well, and their best prices guaranteed. GameTime takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. Easy to find for all these different zones. They have, lowest prices guaranteed, like I've said, event cancellation protection, job loss protection. They're going to give you money back if you find seats better in your same area. So don't worry about that. Say someone pulls out and you're upset. Well, guess what? They got you covered on that as well. And with zone deals, you pick the section and GameTime picks the seats for big time savings. That's right. They help you out just like that, folks. And also, it's not just for sports, comedy, theater, movies, concerts. GameTime, man. They are here to help you out. So go check it out. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON, spelled exactly how you think it is, because you are looking at our podcast. I don't know why it says that in the ad copy, where it's like spell out Locked On. I'm like, well, it says it on the podcast you're listening to. It says Locked On. Come on. Our listeners are geniuses. They know how to figure this out. Download GameTime today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed over at GameTime. And now it's game time for the last bit of our podcast, Ben. And this has been a lot of fun because I really think that it's like one of those issues where I can see both sides. But I think with the Giants, I do agree that going after Snell could prove to be a prudent move. And I think that they need to get a star. They need to become a little bit more of a market, and maybe they will. I think that could change very quickly. I like the team a lot. Again, I don't know how to project them whatsoever. They're such a weird team and club. But look, with the Padres, and I mentioned that they were upset that they reportedly didn't get Jung Ho Lee. I think if you're a Padres fan, I think all the points that I made about Blake Snell and the free agent class are actually better suited for why the Padres shouldn't be spending big now. Because, like you said, Giants have had a tough time bringing in the free agents. And also, whatever, like Bob Melvin, I just trust that they'll figure things out with that team. And unlike the Padres as well, I didn't bring this up, farm system not as strong right now. The Padres at least can be like, well, we've got some young guys. We've got Drew Thorpe from the Yankees in the Soto trade. We got Robbie Snelling. We got Dylan Lesko. They've got like 6 top 100 prospects. They've got Jackson Merrill. They apparently have a high schooler who is amazing. I know he's not literally a high schooler, but Ethan Salas, right? So they're in a position where it's like, maybe you should wait because you guys have been doing nothing but spending over the past few years and getting the big move. So these teams are kind of polar opposites in that area. Yeah. And I think the red flags for Snell, that's why I don't want to use Padres are about like 166 right now. They say that there's a cutoff of 200 from ownership directives and whatnot. I don't want to give up what essentially be the last amount of wiggle room to sign Blake Snell, a player who has some red flags, as opposed to let's see what the pitching prospects have. And if they don't have anything, then I like next year's crop a whole lot more because I just think even those, like, they're actually a team, unlike the Giants, that could use those filler sort of options, right? Like, am I talking myself into Eric Lauer? Maybe. Am I talking myself into John Means? Maybe. I'm not going to confirm whether or not I am. Maybe just a little bit. But then also you have high upside guys, just in case things open up for the Padres. And they're like, you know what? We're back. We took a year off, but we're back. Walker Buehler, you're coming over here. Max Fried, Shane Bieber, Zach Wheeler, I think is the best pitcher available among all these guys. But it's close. We'll see how it transpires. And not to mention, Padres have other positions they need. You know, Eloy Jimenez has a club option this next year. I don't know what the White Sox are doing. I wouldn't be shocked at all if Eloy figures it out as soon as he leaves Chicago, right? You've got Alex Bregman's a free agent. There's Willie Adames. There's Gleyber Torres. Brandon Lau is going to be available. Pete Alonso, Paul Goldschmidt. Rhys Hoskins has an opt-out. Christian Walker, one of the most underrated players in the league. I'm just naming a bunch of guys, but I'm basically just trying to illustrate. I actually think it's smart for the Padres to wait. But I will say, Ben, to finally let you talk, it could be a tough pill to swallow if this Giants thing happens and if they get Blake Snell. It'll be tough. And I think that it is an indictment on the organization if they were to have not just their manager of the year leave to the Giants, but then also Blake Snell leave to your division rival. And it's just tough because you could have traded these guys. I think the Josh Hader one is more inexcusable too. I just don't know what they were doing, and they knew that they were really far out of it. And I don't want to say I guarantee it, but I think you could have got a top 100 guy last year at the deadline for Josh Hader. Not saying he would have changed the world, but at least you get something. Instead, he leaves almost immediately. Unlike Blake Snell, there were no questions that Hader wasn't signing with the Padres. They didn't even talk to the man. With Blake Snell, there was actually a report early on in winter meetings that the Padres were interested. So, you know, take what you will. But Ben, let me tell you, if it was Blake Snell and then if you were to get Ha-Seong Kim next year, you just get all of our beloveds, except for Bob Melvin. He's a little bit of a controversial figure, I think, amongst Padre fans at this point. But if you were to get all those guys, it's just like the Padres are very good at being exciting and then just not fulfilling it with being smart and savvy. That's why I wish that, like, there's a world where both of our teams take the best qualities from each other.
I know.
You know what I mean?
That's exactly what I was thinking when you were talking, as you were describing the Padres and their situation, is that if you take the best of the Padres and if you take like the star talent of the Padres and then you take that depth of not having any bad players really on the Giants and you combine the two, you've got a like super team, I think.
Yeah.
Basically. The Padres' problem has kind of been the guys behind the stars, and the Giants' problem has been not having the stars. And I just want to ask, because, and we didn't get a chance to really talk about the fact that in that report, you know, we mentioned Matt Chapman like briefly, but it would be a different route. I think it's less of a fit because they have JD Davis, but at the same time, it's an upgrade over JD Davis. It just becomes kind of a conundrum. Like, what do you do with him?
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. Yeah,
because they have a DH in Soler, and first base is Lamont Wade plus Wilmer Flores. So JD Davis just kind of loses his spot. if they were to sign Chapman, but at the same time, he's an upgrade. So I don't want to discount that was part of the report. But I do just want to ask you, because you're uniquely qualified to answer, given that you watched the man for what, 2 or 3 years, Blake Snell.
Mhm.
So you're saying there's the red flags, but like at the same time, the dude was awesome, right?
Mhm.
Like, so like forget the red flags, forget the Cy Young, just like overall, what do you have to say, like succinctly? How would you summarize like the value of Blake Snell? And do you think he's like a guy who is worth bringing on to a team?
For all the reasons we discussed, where, aside from the star thing that the Giants are needing, first of all, he's got a Giants personality. Almost Tim Lincecum light, dare I say. Where it'd be this like, he has that like kid vibe to him, teenager vibe to him. And I think that that's what Tim Lincecum had a little bit. He's playing on Twitch, and yes, did he get in trouble during the lockout when he said the comments about the $200,000 or whatever? Yeah, sure, of course. It wasn't bad. It's just that he slightly tone deaf, I think, during the time that it happened. That's all. But he was also right too. But Blake Snell, very funny interview, would be really lively, and I think just a good hang around the clubhouse, and would be good for that team, especially having a Cy Young winner, guys. It means something, and he's got two, so that means a lot. And I think that he's a guy that you can work with. Ruben Niebla, legendary pitching coach, especially out of Cleveland. He helped Blake Snell figure out and work out some of the things that he had, and he changed his repertoire a bunch. He will have stretches at the beginning where you're like, what are you doing? Why are you trying to throw like a screwball curve with a change? Like, what are you doing here? And he can be a little bit annoying where you'll literally go outside and throw out the trash, and it's still a 2-2 count on the batter. He's not like a pretty pitcher. The strikeouts are pretty when he gets people to chase the final pitch, but he's going to have those outings where you're like, yeah, those are some great 3 innings. You know what I mean? But then when he gets going, when
Yeah.
he's on, you notice it. You notice when he's on, you're like, this is one of the Snell games. When he was great against the Dodgers this year, he had a great start against the D-backs. When he just became Jake Arrieta for like 18 starts. I believe that the stat was that it's only Bob Gibson had a better like 16 game stretch than Blake Snell in the history of baseball in terms of ERA, at least. And then Jake Arrieta was third. That one like 2015 season, I forgot, the year before they won the World Series,
Which is a red flag when you throw out the name Jake Arrieta too, because what did he quickly became a nobody. So yeah,
it's a little concerning, but again, I think that he's a really good player. Yeah, Jake Arrieta really did fall off, but I think it was also with Arrieta, it was like he came into the limelight like later on, but even still, like he was burned bright, and then that was it kind of, right, for a little bit. But I think Blake Snell's a little bit better than him because it's just always been a question of availability. Like I said, the 2 times he's gone over 130 innings, he's won the Cy Young. The problem is he hasn't done that a lot.
Yeah.
And there is some worry with that. But if he's on, man, that is a guy that if you're in a wild card series, you're like, what the heck? We have to go up against Webb. And by the way, who knows what happens with Kyle Harrison and Alex Cobb? If Robbie Ray is anything at all, and if they can maximize him, they've done it before with other guys. They've helped them find their horn again. Alex Cobb being an example. Desclafani being an example. Rodon being an example, frankly. I know that he had a couple moments with the White Sox, but even still, like, they found people, and then the aforementioned Gausman. That's like, you could put that up against any team.
Exactly.
Braves, Dodgers, you could probably put it up against too, because we don't know for sure what we're getting from some of those guys. Certainly my team. So that gives you that feeling of, yeah, maybe we only will score 2 runs, but that's what we always do, man. That's what we've been doing since the 100 days.
That's how they won in the championships.
Yeah,
they pitched the heck out of the ball and won
they have
3
an
titles.
Offense that just knows how to hit in the right situations, contact-oriented offense. I don't know if you saw that they haven't had a 30 home run hitter since Bonds in 2004.
Oh,
which
I know.
Is wild.
I'm well aware.
Wild.
Jorge Soler could finally break the
yeah, we'll see.
streak.
So I say all this to say I'd be sad to see everybody leave to our division rival, but I think for the Giants, it's a worthy gamble. I really do. And at some point, you got to get some guys, especially for a team that doesn't seem to have the farm reinforcements. But I don't know, man. It's going to be fun. It's got to be any day now. Like it has to be.
So.
We're literally in the middle of spring training. So.
Especially with a report like that coming out. Yeah. And then there's all this New York Post stuff about Snell and the Yankees, which I just don't think is real. But yet.
Yeah, with Soto. Yeah.
Well, with Soto, and then even before that, just they had a phone call and it went well, except it's still extremely unlikely because they'd have to pay 110% tax on every dollar that they spend on him.
Yeah.
Like literally pay him double. Like if you give him 30 million, it's like, oh no, it's 60 something million.
Yeah. I mean, hey, that's how it goes sometimes.
Yep.
But Ben, as always, this has been a lot of fun. Everybody, that about does it for today's edition of not just the Locked On Padres podcast, but also the Locked On Giants podcast. I am one of your hosts, Javier Reyes. You can find me on Twitter at Javipeno, JAVIIPENO, the best handle in the game. Ben Caspick, you can, of course, find at Ben Caspick. Same thing as his name. Very easy to find. Follow both of us also on YouTube, Locked On Padres and Locked On Giants, respectively. I write a bunch of stuff for justbaseball.com. I'll be having an article on Bogarts this week, and also about how I hate the Yankees away uniforms because I'm insufferable and I like to repeat my takes sometimes. And I'm going to be doing that in a very fun, humorous way to mix up some of the baseball talk. So look forward to that. And all the news will have you covered, whatever happens, if Snell happens, if he doesn't, whatever. We got you guys. Ben, it's been a blast. And folks, stay tuned for our next crossover where we'll be talking about our favorite cult classic Padres and Giants players since we've been covering the teams respectively, which for me was in 2020. So that should be a lot of fun. You got to be positive. You know what I mean? We're trying to be positive these days, guys. It's important. Until next time, stay faithful, my Friar Faithful homies, and stay gentle, my Giants of San Francisco.
Just not Gregorius.
Just not Gregorius. Take care, everybody.